The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Today FM.
It all happens here.
Today FM.
I'm just looking at a report that has gone up in the Financial Times. I'm only reading from it. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but it says that the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine is less effective in halting the spread of the Delta variant than that of previous strains of coronavirus. This is a study that has been released this afternoon by Israel's health ministry. The data collected over the past month suggests that the vaccine is 64% effective at halting infection amongst those who are fully inoculated, down from a previous estimate of 94%. However, the figures also indicate the vaccine is 93% effective against serious illness and hospitalisation. Of course, there are many people who are also raising questions about how well the AstraZeneca virus does in dealing with the Delta variant, but that isn't stopping the English from opening up society. Let's hear what the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has had to say in the last half hour.
We'll move away from legal restrictions and allow people to make their own informed decisions about how to manage the virus. From step 4, we will remove all legal limits on the numbers meeting indoors and outdoors. We will allow all businesses to reopen, including nightclubs. We will lift the limit on named visitors to care homes and on numbers of people attending concerts, theatre and sports events.
A lot in there, but presenter Nick Ferrari at Breakfast on LBC Radio. What else did he have to say?
Well, it has been heavily predicted, and you're absolutely right. Good evening to you, to pick out those headlines. What else have we got? There will be. It will not be necessary. It will not be now advised that you will work from home. They will not be telling you should go back to your office, but there will not be the guidance that you should necessarily have to stay there. You will not need so-called COVID passports. It was thought you'd need those to attend theatres, concerts, and other events. That will no longer be the place. The 1 metre distance, I think you just said the 1 metre distance, it has now been scrapped. The goal is that all under 40s now, the gap between having their second and first inoculation will be down from 12 weeks to 8. That, they believe, will be all under 40s done by September, by the end of September. The test, trace and isolate. Now, this is very controversial. That although they, quote, are looking to move, that's his words, looking to move the guidance on that, this will still be in place. Now, a lot of bosses, again, I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's quite difficult at the moment because if you now suddenly turn everybody into the workplace, we have a colloquialism here that you get pinged. That is to say that someone you know goes down with COVID, you get pinged and you'd have to stay at home. Bosses are understandably furious. If July the 19th is terminus date and yet you still have test, trace and isolate, so everyone is encouraged to go back to work, that means they're riding the trains, they're going to the coffee shops, they're going to the pubs. Then everyone is going to get pinged. So that watch for that one to cause a lot of concern. And just lastly, border controls, pretty much as they were, although there could be some relief for the fully vaccinated, that is to say, the 60+ % of Brits, although this applies to English, of course, as you're quite rightly said, coming back home from other countries, they are looking for those not to have to quarantine. I repeat, not to have to quarantine if you've had double doses.
OK, how much of a risk is involved in all of this, given that we're hearing plenty of reports of rising case numbers of the Delta variant, of even people who have been fully vaccinated falling ill with the Delta variant? How much of a risk is it to suddenly start saying full football grounds for people to go to, all sorts of normal life resuming as if this coronavirus is just some sort of flu that you live with?
Well, that's totally the key question. I was struck by a couple of things having watched the press conference. I was struck by the figure of around 50,000 cases. Now, that's what the Prime Minister said they expect to be around the time of the terminus date. Just to give you an idea, the last figure was 27,200 and something. So it's almost a doubling they expect by July 19th. I was also struck by the somber tone that was employed by his two key scientific and medical advisors, Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty, namely. I mean, obviously, they only advise, ministers decide. There are reports that they're not necessarily signed up to that. So why are they doing it? Well, the answer is simple. They say that the vaccination program, and it has been hugely successful. I mean, you look at the figures, they are quite incredible. If you look at where we were at this sort of time last year, you had around 1,300 people being hospitalised with 24,000 cases. We've got 27,000 cases now, and we've got 350 people, just 350. So, again, the point you just made about the effectiveness against the Delta strain Clearly the vaccination programme is working. But if there were a bump in the road that you just mentioned prior to introducing me to the show, that is where this could potentially really blow up in their face.
And then why not just ask people to continue wearing masks?
Now, this is a really interesting one. He's going to come into contact with the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, which obviously, by dint of it being the capital city, that's where most people are on, the buses and the tubes and everything else in the trains. Mayor Khan is saying it should stay policy. Boris Johnson, perhaps going back to his old libertarian policies, he was actually asked during the press conference in what instances would he wear it. And he said if anybody felt uncomfortable or if he were on a crowded tube. But he said if he was on a carriage on his own going home, which is obviously never going to happen, he wouldn't wear it. I think, again, this is the incredible fight. And don't let your listeners forget, there's been a sea change in the high echelons of the British cabinet here with the departure of Matt Hancock over the Hancock affair in every sense of the word, and the arrival of Sajid Javid, who is far, far more hawkish. He's a former Chancellor. He knows the pain the economy is suffering. So that's why I think he's really, I do sense Boris Johnson has for some time have been looking for an ally, he and Rishi Sunak, and they've been outweighed by the scientific advice, the medical advice, Matt Hancock and various others. And I think they've got a buddy now, and that's why, in part, they feel emboldened. And also, if I have time, it's difficult here. We watch the football, and in fact, I think this was referenced by one of the questions. You know, we see 10,000 people who've never met each other hugging at Wembley. I appreciate the quarter wasn't at Wembley, and pouring beer at each other. But I can't actually invite 6 people from different households to come and watch the semi-final. That has played a massive part in it.
You will have 60,000 people in Wembley for the semi-final on Wednesday night.
Yes, we are. Absolutely. And if England progress, exactly so. And I think that has been a massive factor. Frankly, it is farcical that I can't have 6 mates in my house to watch the semi unless we all live in the same bubble. But I can go to Wembley and start hugging and kissing and pouring beer over blokes I've never met in my life.
One final thing. Wasn't the timing of Matt Hancock's exit very handy in that it allowed Johnson to replace him with somebody who was all on for easing off on the restrictions? Yeah,
but if you read the suggestions and the allegations that the one person who might have been involved in this, I stress might, and these are only reports, Dominic Cummings, there's no way that Mr. Cummings would be wanting in any way, sense or form to help Boris along. One thing to remember about Boris Johnson, he's a very, very lucky general. He's consistently fought weak opposition. Ken Livingstone as Mayor of London twice. Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister. Theresa May once. He always seems to find weak opposition. If there's one thing he is, he's a lucky general.
Which probably means England will win the European Championships next Sunday.
I'll take you words from your lips to God's ears.
Thank you very much, Nick Ferrari, presenter Nick Ferrari at Breakfast on LBC Radio. Amanda Ferguson, freelance journalist based in Belfast, joins us as well. Amanda, the distinction, of course, being that what Boris Johnson has announced today is for England. But there tends to be a move, particularly amongst unionists, to try and do in the north what is done in England as quickly as possible. Would you anticipate that happening?
Well, I anticipate that the politicians at Stormont are probably going to disagree on what happens next. We do know that the DUP has been more sort of sceptical about the COVID restrictions and often pushed for them to open and ease faster perhaps than some of the other parties. And with a 5-party mandatory coalition, it can be difficult to find consensus. But what we do know is that the Health Minister, Robin Swan, from the Ulster Unionist Party, has been on the airwaves this morning, and he is striking quite a cautious tone. Now, what he said this morning was that the Chief Scientific Officer in Northern Ireland, Professor Ian Young, had said if we can get up to 90% first doses by the end of July, that could reduce hospital admissions by half when the peak comes. And there's a sense perhaps that, Robin Swan's quite keen on the idea of face coverings as one of the mitigations to remain. But I suppose we'll find out a little bit more on when the executive have their meeting on Thursday.
Okay, you also, of course, have extensive travel between Britain and Northern Ireland. Has that brought about many more cases of the Delta variant, and how is that then impacting on hospital admissions and ICU numbers?
Well, we live on an island, and we know that the variants don't arrive here by themselves, so they arrive when people travel in from Britain and from the rest of Ireland, and we know that a lot of people live all island. Certainly the increase in people from the Republic crossing the border into the north to take advantage of our hospitality has very much been noted by pub owners and taxi drivers, and people at the forecourt garages, seeing people filling up their petrol pumps. So we know that people are mixing a lot more than we have previously, and that happens in both directions. We do have over 2 million people, 2 million doses of vaccines issued at this point, and the Health Department did release news today that there can be a walk-in service for the second dose at our SSE centre. So they're trying to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. We know that overnight there was 420 positive cases reported. We can see that there are 32 COVID-19 inpatients at the moment. 4 of them are in ICU. But certainly all the issues around long COVID, around what to do regarding children, it's all up in the air. And Professor Gabriel Scally, who's from this part of the world, who's based over in England at the moment, said that the government's deliberately subjecting the people of the UK to a new wave of COVID while they're denying an approved vaccine to young people. So I imagine that debate over whether young people are vaccinated will carry on, because there seems to be a sort of discussion at the moment, are you better off with children being vaccinated or with them getting infected? And certainly there are experts like Deepti Gurdasani who said that vaccine responses to SARS-CoV-2 are much stronger than those from natural infections.
Okay.
So that will rumble on, but we're getting towards the end of our pathway out of restrictions, and Stormont will come under pressure to try and ease things, but it depends. It depends what they agree to on Thursday, I suppose, and I'd imagine they'll give us advance dates.
Amanda Ferguson, thank you for joining us. Ciara in Tyrone says, we've just come home from a weekend in Portrush on the north coast. Yesterday we walked around the coast to the Giant's Causeway. While it was certainly a lot quieter than usual, I was shocked at how many overseas visitors there were. It seems to me that everyone has got fed up with the pandemic. Also at Dunluce Castle on Saturday, nearly all the cars in the car park were ROI registrations.
The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Weekdays from 4:30. Today